I'm Ken Zelin with McIntosh. Let's unbox and set up an MT5 turntable so it's ready to use. Right on top, we'll find the owner's manual, a tone arm overhang gauge, which is used if you change the phono cartridge sometime in the future. Remove the top pad. And we have the dust cover. Remove another pad. And we have the felt mat and lots of accessories. We have the sub platter, the power supply, the spindle assembly, the record clamp, the drive belt, plug adapters for the power supply for different countries, and a bag of accessories. I'm going to take the gloves out first, which I want to put on while handling the turntable. We'll remove the top pad. And now the turntable can come out. And there's our beautiful MT5 turntable. We're going to remove this protector from the spindle assembly. And we're going to go into our accessory bag. In there we'll find oil, a ground cable, a stylus force gauge, some tools for adjustments, a pair of screws if we sometime in the future change out the phono cartridge, a bubble level, and the tone arm counterweight. We're going to start with the oil, remove it from the package, open it up, and now you'll want to take a diagonal cutters or scissors and cut off the very tip, which will release the oil. 2 drops of oil go on the bearing assembly at the top, and we'll let them drip down. The adhesive comes off of the spindle assembly, and you want to lower that straight down. Give it a little spin, let the oil coat the bearing. Drop the sub platter on. You notice there's screw holes and a large indentation. That's the bottom. Our drive belt comes out of the bag. Make sure your gloves are on for this. Around the sub platter and around the motor pulley. There we go. And then I'll give this a spin once or twice and make sure that the belt isn't twisted, that it's sitting nice and flat. Okay, this is going to be ready to accept the platter in a moment. Now I'm going to remove the platter from the bottom of the box. Make sure you have gloves on for this because you don't want to get finger oils on the platter since it illuminates. And we'll lower the platter onto the spindle assembly. The felt mat comes out of the sleeve, placed on the turntable. We'll open up the record clamp and set it right on the turntable. The tone arm counterweight gets removed from its bag loosen the nut on the top, slide it onto the arm tube so it's just covering up and slightly forward of the etched line on the arm tube. We'll tighten it up. Doesn't have to be very tight right now. We're going to set the force in just a few minutes. This is the power supply for the turntable, and it currently doesn't have a plug on it. Several different plugs are included depending on what country you live in. Here comes the plug for the United States, so we'll open up the bag. Line this up, and it slips on, and it's fully engaged when it makes a click. We'll do some connections in a few minutes. Next, we have to set the tracking force. So the first thing I like to do is just push the tone arm wiring up and make sure it's out of the way so it doesn't interfere. I'll remove the clamp, and I'll remove the mat for a moment and remove the stylus force gauge from its wrapper. This is the stylus force gauge. The cartridge that comes in the MT5 wants to track at 2 grams plus or minus 0.2. So anywhere between 1.8 and 2.2 grams is fine. We're going to set this on the platter. When we put the stylus on the number 2 line for 2 grams, we want to be at 2 grams plus or minus 0.2. So anywhere from 1.8 to 2.2 grams. When the stylus is set on the 2, if this bar tilts this way, we have too much force. If it tilts this way, we have not enough. And when it is teetering right between the 2 and floating level, that's when the force is correct. So let's set the stylus over the 2. And right now it's a tiny bit light. So I'm going to loosen up the counterweight and bring it forward just a little bit. We are about there. So when I set it on the 2, right now it's exactly on 2, the force gauge is level. We're in business. Now whenever I'm going to set up a turntable, I always bring my stylus force gauge with me. This is an electronic force gauge. Most hi-fi dealers sell these. This makes the whole process quick and easy. I always have that with me when I know I have to set up a turntable. They're available from most hi-fi dealers. You set your stylus on it, and it gives you a very precise reading. In this case, we're at 2.12 grams, so we're well within the 1.8 to 2.2 range, and we're all set. Next, we're going to level the turntable. So the mat goes back on, the clamp goes on. We'll set the bubble level on the platter, and the bubble should be right in the middle. It's pretty close. The front needs to come up a little bit, so I'm going to reach underneath and just unscrew the 2 front feet. Just a couple of turns might do it. We're pretty close. We're right in the middle. Now I want to just wiggle this corner and wiggle this corner and make sure there's no rocking. In this case, I feel a tiny bit of rocking, so I'm going to just loosen this foot a little bit, like a quarter turn is probably going to do it. That feels solid, and the bubble is right in the center, so we're all leveled. We're ready to make the connections. Next, we're going to make the connections. You'll want to get an audio cable from your dealer because that does not come with the turntable. If you have a McIntosh system, you'll probably also want to ask for a 3-conductor data cable. So let's start with the power supply. That goes in the jack at the far end. The platter on the MT5 lights up green when the turntable's running, when the motor is running. But most owners would prefer to have the platter light up green even when the motor is not running, when it's in standby. That's where the 3-conductor trigger cable comes in. You plug one end into the power control output of your McIntosh system and the other end into the power control input on the back of the turntable. Now the platter will light up without having to have the motor running. A much better situation. This is the ground wire that comes with the turntable. This should go on next. We loosen this nut, and there's a hole in the post. The wire drops right down into that, and we tighten it up. Here's our audio cable. In this case, it's red and white. Sometimes it's red and black. The red goes into the red jack, and that's for the right channel. The white goes into the white or black jack, and that is for the left channel. At the other end of the ground wire is a spade lug with 2 prongs on it. Now, when you go to connect this to your system on the ground connection, you might find that these 2 prongs are too close together, making it difficult to insert that. If that's the case, take a little pliers, bend back one of these lugs, and that way the other prong will go right in and you can tighten it up, and that will work perfectly well. Let's play a record album. We'll remove the clamp. Record on the platter. Clamp goes on. Turntable on. Make sure the cueing lever here is in the up position. Put the stylus over the beginning of the album and lower the lever. You don't have to lower it all the way. Lower it about 3/4 of the way and the stylus will go right down onto the record. And when it's done playing, you don't have to lift it up by hand. You'll use the cueing lever. Put that into the upright position. The arm will go back into the stand and you can shut off the motor to change your album. It's that simple. If you ever decide to change out the phono cartridge to a different model, or you get a different record mat, might be thinner, might be thicker than the one that comes standard with the turntable, you might need to adjust the height of the back of the tone arm. The arm should be level with the record while it's playing. Now, a quick, easy way to tell that, I like to use a sheet of graph paper and I set that right on the record and I look from the side and the tone arm tube should be parallel to the lines of the record. If it isn't, that's when you use the largest of the 3 Allen wrenches that comes with the turntable. And we have 2 nuts that get loosened up. One is right here. Counterclockwise motion, you loosen that up a bit. We have a second one right here. You loosen that. Now we can raise and lower the tone arm a little bit and tighten it back up. Very simple. You might also decide at some point that you want to change the cueing height. So that's when you use the cueing lever, how far off the record the stylus is. To adjust that, simply put your finger on the bottom of the cueing mechanism, insert the small hex key into this little hex screw, counterclockwise, loosen it up. You can raise and lower this platform and tighten it back up. So as I talked about, the platter of the MT5 lights up either when the motor is on or if you've connected a power control cable when the turntable's even in standby. But you can adjust the level of intensity of the lighting if you want. Use the small screwdriver and there's a lighting intensity adjustment. You may have to turn it several times to get it to the level that you want. There's also a plate here, and you use the medium-size Allen wrench. There's 2 screws that you can remove. This plate comes off, and that's speed fine-tuning. I like to check the speed of my turntable maybe once a year. I have a strobe disc. They're available for just a few dollars from mail order places. Sits on the platter, put a fluorescent light over it, and you can see if the turntable speed is perfect. There's also now apps that you can get that go right on your smartphone where you put your phone on the platter and it'll read out the speed. And if you need to adjust that, again, you remove that plate and then you use the little screwdriver that came with the turntable, and there's a 33, 45, and 78 adjustment. And again, you may have to turn it several times to get it perfect. That's it. We're ready to plug the turntable into the system. The two phono plugs go into the phono input on your system. If you have MM and MC inputs, this turntable with the cartridge that comes with it would go into the MM, or moving magnet phono input. Connect the ground wire, that eliminates hum, and enjoy your new MT5 turntable.